Hi there, welcome to Season Liberally. My name's Cecil. Today we're going to be cooking turkey all across the United States during holiday season, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Turkeys are cooked in many different households, and sometimes these turkeys can be dry and pretty awful, but I'm going to show you a real easy trick today to make sure your turkey is juicy and delicious. So we got to get started today. In order to prep this bird, we've got to get it out of its plastic here, and we've also got to set up our station because a turkey itself is going to be sort of hard to break down, and we want to make sure we're at a nice safe station in order to do it. So the first thing I want to do is actually get this bird out of its bag and get all of the pieces that are inside the bird separated from it. Now, to get it to this stage, most of the time you'll buy one of these and it's going to be frozen. It'll be frozen solid at the store. So you want to go home and you want to defrost this turkey. Now the best way and the safest way to defrost your turkey is several days, 4 or 5 days before Thanksgiving. You want to clean out a spot in your refrigerator, put a towel down just in case there happens to be a hole poked in this bag, and you want to set it in there and just let it sit for many, many days. That's the safest way. The second way you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a nice big stock pot, the biggest one you have, fill it with cold water, drop the turkey in, and then run cold water from your tap slowly into that pot, and that will bring the turkey up to cold water temperature. Be sure to check it every couple hours to make sure it's not fully thawed, and then put it in your refrigerator. So my turkey's been defrosted and it is ready to go, but I gotta get it out of the bag and I gotta get all this stuff out, so that's what we're gonna do right now. So we're gonna cut this out of the bag. This is a 16-pound turkey that I have now. I'm being very careful with this knife. I'm gonna cut the plastic off the outside. Now this turkey is gonna be filled inside with the parts that they took off of this turkey. So I'm gonna cut the bag here, open it up. Now I'm doing this over the sink because, as you can see, this thing is going to leak out a bunch of stuff. All right, so I want to try to take this bag off as best I can and dump all the stuff in the center out. Now, inside of this is just the neck. Now, normally what I try to do too is I'll set the neck on the side for now. I'm going to use that for stock later. But one of the things I try to do is I try to wash the turkey out a little bit on the inside and the outside, just to wash all the stuff off that was at the, I don't know how this turkey's processed, and so I want to just make sure I wash it off and rinse it off just a little. So I'm using cool water, and I just want to rinse it on the outside, knock off anything there, and it's going to pour out the center here. I'm going to wash the top of it off too. All right, our bird's nice and washed. We're going to take it back to the cutting board. All right, so now while the turkey's drying a little bit, I will pat it down with some paper towels in a second, but while it's drying, I want to make sure that I set my station up. Now, I'm using this cutting board here. Now, this cutting board is just a flat cutting board, but they do sell them with some grooves around the edge that can catch some juice and things. Any of the liquid that's coming off of what you're cutting, and that's really useful for things like roasts and such like that it'll have a channel around the outside so it'll catch it. I have one of those, but it's for carving, and I'm going to use that later when I finally carve the bird. But before then, I'm actually going to secure my cutting board like I normally would, but I'm actually going to make sure that the paper towel is a little bit around the outside, just in case this gets a little juicy and starts leaking in different places. And so that's what we're going to do right now is we're going to wet a little paper towel and we're going to lay it down flat onto our surface so our cutting board doesn't slide, but also so it catches any of that sort of gross turkey juice that's going to pour out of this turkey as we butcher it. So now when I set this on, there's a nice little bit of ring around this whole thing, so that if it does catch, it will sort of absorb into this little channel of paper towels that I've created. And so I'm just going to pat it down a little bit. All right. So when you're buying a turkey, they do sell turkeys that are not processed a lot. The turkeys like kosher turkeys and like free-range turkeys and things like that, they will need an extra step. I would suggest you brine something like that. If it doesn't have solution injected into it already, you want to brine it. Brines are pretty easy recipes to find. You can find a recipe online. They need to sit in that brine for quite some time. So they inject these birds with a solution, a salt solution. So it's essentially brining it already. And so you don't have to worry about brining this turkey. In fact, if you brine this turkey after you bought it, if you bought one that was already processed, that already had solution injected into it, it would be really salty. And so you don't want to brine a bird that's already been injected. So be sure to check the label on your bird to make sure that it hasn't been injected with something. The injection is normally salt, seasoning, spices, and water. And that they inject it in there so that it acts like a brine. It keeps the meat juicy as it cooks. Now, what most people do when they have a bird like this is they cook it like this. They will stuff it with some sort of stuffing. They will normally tuck the little wings back over here. And as you can see, this is already trussed by the company. They did a trussing that doesn't use sometimes they'll use a metal piece in here, and I don't feel one. Instead, they just cut the bird and used the back end of the bird to stuff the legs in. That basically compacts the bird, and it does help in some ways to keep the bird sort of as one unit, and it makes it so that it cooks a little more even. But we're going to actually completely break this bird down because we don't want it to cook like a tube like it is. It's essentially a tube. This part is going to cook, so this is the thigh and the leg. The thigh and the leg are actually going to cook at a different rate than the breast will. And so turkeys are actually kind of hard to cook. And so what we want to do is we want to try to make sure that we maximize the space that this bird is taking up. And if we do that, we can sort of ensure that it's all going to cook at the same rate. Now the good thing is that the breast doesn't have to come up as high as the thigh to be finished. So the thigh, we want it kind of around 165 or so. The breast around 150 when we pull it out of the oven. That means that the thigh won't have any red juices, or it'll be clear when the juices run from it, and there won't be any pink at all inside of the breast. So we're going to get started. I want to show you too that inside here, inside the neck of the bird, right here, we have a little packet. And inside this packet are the organs of the animal. So there's a gizzard, there's a heart, and then there's the liver. And so lots of times people will use this in giblet gravy. It also is packed with the neck, and the neck is going to be used in our stock, but so will the backbone, because we're going to be cutting the backbone out of this turkey when we spatchcock it. That's what I'm going to show you how to do today, to cut down and break down this bird. So now that it's sort of set up, and when we're ready to start cutting into it, we're going to need a good butcher's knife. Now you can use butcher shears. They sell butcher shears that are really powerful, can snip right through bone. I don't own a pair of butcher shears. I just own a knife. I do want to show you though, one of the reasons why you want to be sure not to put your knives in the dishwasher and take care of your knives is that the handles may break if you put this inside of a dishwasher. The handle may break, and that might be bad for your knife, because then they won't replace it.
Hey, wash the dishes yourself then.
You know, just pay attention to the camera over there, please. So I had to go out and buy a brand new knife here. So that's what I'm going to be using today, is the brand new knife that I have to replace because my other knife is broken. So let's get started here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the legs out of the little pocket that they made for it, okay? And what I want to do is I want to expose this backbone. So I'm going to flip the bird over on its tummy here, and we're going to undo the wing that I had already cut out earlier. And so we need to cut this backbone out of the bird. And so if you feel on the side of the backbone, you can feel that there's like a little bit of thin cartilage that runs alongside here. Now, this is a difficult process. My suggestion is you grab a hold of the bird, and when you cut, don't cut towards yourself. This is slippery, you can hurt yourself. Just be really careful. If you have a chainmail glove, great time to wear one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut directly in, and you see I'm just pressing down, and I'm just cutting right along the backbone. Now there is a little harder part right here, and if it's hard, if it's difficult to get through, you can always use a cleaver or a kitchen knife to sort of, a chef's knife to sort of chop in there, but you can also just pull it apart a little, and then just press down, and it cuts directly alongside the bone. That's what I'm doing right now. I am not cutting the backbone itself, instead I'm just cutting alongside the backbone. So now I have to cut this other side. I already cut one side here. I'm gonna cut the skin so it folds open a little better. And so now we've got to cut the other side. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to again grab over here on the turkey. I'm grabbing its leg. So when I cut, I'm not cutting toward myself. I'm cutting into the backbone. So if the knife does slip, it's going to slip this way. I don't want it to slip this way. So cut alongside like so. There's that one little piece here. Like I said, it's pretty hard to get through, but once you get through it, it just goes through the rest of the bone, no problem. Now, again, I'm gonna grab right here, nice and far away from my hand, and I'm gonna cut that backbone out. And so this is the backbone of the turkey. This is gonna make a really, really nice stock for us. And if you're interested to learn how to make stock, if you know how to make stock, my suggestion is make some stock with these two parts, the neck and the back, and throw in, if you have some chicken parts too. You could throw in some chicken parts. But and if you want to know how to make stock, you can check out this video right here. And this video is going to show you how to make stock if you've never made it before. All right, so now we've got the bird. Essentially, the back has been opened. But now what we have to do is we have to score just a little bit here with our knife. And if you look, it might be hard to see because there's not a lot of light getting in there. There's a piece of cartilage right here. And I want to cut right alongside that cartilage with my knife. And I'm going to cut it open right alongside that cartilage. And then when I open it, it essentially just falls right open. Now again, as I said, this is sharp right here. So don't press too hard on it, but you want to essentially give it a nice press to press it down and break this open so that it's laying nice and flat. And so what we have is a beautifully flat bird that will cook up nice and even. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a pan. But before I do that, I want to get two more pieces off this bird that are actually going to cook in the stock. This is the wing, this is the wing, this is a little nub. I don't need this nub, and this nub is full of flavor and will also make nice stock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off. Once you find the joint, you can cut it directly off like so. You can, if you don't want to do this, you can tuck this inside like this. You see how this is tucked? You can do that if you don't want to use the turkey part there. So when this cooks, normally it's in a tube, and this part, actually the part that takes the longest and is the hardest to cook is the part that is underneath the bird. And so it doesn't receive a lot of the heat that's from the oven. It's being protected from, from radiant heat from the bottom, from the pan. And so it's not receiving the same level of heat that the breast is. And so that's when you normally eat a turkey, the breast is overcooked and this is a little underdone. Or if this is done right, then the breast is way overcooked. So it's really hard to sort of get the bird to work in that, to work and to all be cooked all properly at the same time. Well, when you do this process, when you spatchcock the bird, you essentially open up the bottom of the bird so that these are exposed to the top part of the oven, the radiant heat of the oven. So they're going to be taking the brunt of the actual heat of the oven. And they will also be protecting part of the breast here. If you look the way it's sitting, it's going to be protecting part of the breast. So it's going to take a little longer for the temperature to rise in the breast, and it's going to protect it a little bit. And so that's going to make it so that the turkey cooks nice and even. So what we're going to do today too is we're going to bard this turkey. Now if you bard something, you basically put fat in between the meat and the skin of the animal. If you were to put it into the actual meat, that's called larding. If you put it just in between the skin and the muscle, that's barding, and that's what we're going to do today. I just have a real simple compound butter here. This is some parsley, salt, and butter. That's all there is. You could put a little lemon in here. You could throw some garlic in here. You could put a little shallot, whatever you want to do. But I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a little pocket alongside the breast here. And I'm going to reach my hand in here just to separate the skin a little from the muscle. And then I'm going to stuff it with some of this butter and parsley mixture. And then I'm going to flatten it down as best I can. Now, this is going to melt as the bird cooks, and it will hopefully baste the inside muscle tissue of the breast, and it will keep it nice and juicy. Now, it's going to be juicy anyway. This is a great way to cook a turkey. So if you skip this step, it's not a big deal, but this is just adding another flavor layer to turkey. And you can flavor this with whatever you want. So you can make like a Southwest mix and put it inside of this compound butter. You could put, you could certainly use different kinds of herbs. You could use thyme or dill or whatever you want to use to enhance the flavor. So I have a roasting pan here. You can use a sheet pan if you want. Just be sure I like to try to keep the bird off the bottom. What's going to happen is in the bottom, you're going to get some juice from the turkey. This is great for later if you want to make some gravy. The juice from the turkey will be able to soak down there. If you're going to baste this bird, I normally don't baste. I normally just let it cook. But if you're going to baste the bird, don't use the drippings from the bottom. If you use the drippings from the bottom, it's going to soften the skin. And if you want it, I don't know who doesn't want it to be crispy. So you want it to be nice and crispy here. And so if you're going to be basting the bird at all, my suggestion to you would be instead just use fat. So if you have some oil, you want to put some peanut oil on it and then salt it again or whatever, that's fine. If you want to take some butter, melted butter, and baste it with that, that's also fine. But I would stay away from the drippings on the bottom of the pan because that has water and other turkey juice liquid in it, and you don't want to put that on top of the skin. It's not preferable to me. If it's sort of a tradition at your house, feel free to do it. But if this is your first time making a bird, I would try to just do it with fat or not do it at all. All right, so as you can see, the bird is sort of compact sitting in here, real nice, okay? So we know that it's gonna fit. I do have to turn it over one more time because I wanna salt the underside of this bird just to make sure that there's a little bit of salt on the bottom of it and underneath it. So I'm gonna turn it over one more time. And there's a little bit of breast exposed here, a little bit of breast down there. And while it's flipped over like this, one thing you might want to do is get your knife and pull the wishbone out. And so the wishbone is right alongside here. And the reason why we're pulling this out is because it actually makes the carving process a lot easier later on. So if you pull the wishbone out of your turkey, you can carve it a lot easier. Now I'm doing this mostly with my hands, but it does get caught at the edges. So I will take my knife and just slide it along to cut it out at the edge. So if you see here, it's stuck here. If I just slide my knife just a little bit alongside here, it comes right out. Pull it here. Now I have the wishbone. It's clear of the meat. Now I'm just gonna turn and pull. And it will come right out. So that's the wishbone. I want to pull that wishbone out. And I want to pull that wishbone out because when I cut this bird later on, it'll be super easy to cut then. That wishbone gets in the way of the breast meat when you cut it. All right, flipping this bad boy back over for the last time. We're going to make sure our butter is in the right position. We're going to position the bird where we want it, and now we're going to salt the hell out of the outside of it, okay? Now, If you want, you can rub a little oil in here too at this point, okay? So if you want, you can I'll take some peanut oil to show you. You could take a little oil, drizzle it over the top, and just rub it in, okay? Now that's rubbing with the salt that I just put on here. And that's distributing it all over the bird, okay? Oil is going to conduct heat faster than air, and it's going to crisp the skin up better, okay? Now the oven I'm putting it into is a 425 convection. That's 450 conventional oven. So that's a pretty hot oven. This bird's going to cook. The other thing that you're going to notice too, this bird's going to cook a hell of a lot faster than if we left it in its first form. When it's cooked like this, it's flattened out. It's going to cook a lot faster than if it were to be cooked without the backbone removed. Okay, so now we're going to put it in our oven, and we are going to wait. We're going to check it in about 45 minutes, and I'm going to put a probe thermometer. This is another thing you're going to need for this too. If you don't have a thermometer, you have to check it. You have to check it using traditional methods. That would mean you would want to check the joint and make sure it's freely flowing. You want to check the juices, make sure they're running clear. That's not as a accurate method as having a probe thermometer. Now, they sell probe thermometers they're relatively inexpensive. They sell ones that actually you can stick into the bird and put it in the oven, and then it'll just automatically notify you when it's ready. Now, you want to make sure that the breast meat, I like to bring the breast meat up to about 152 is about right where I want it to bring, because the bird, once I take it out of the oven, is going to carry over cook. It's going to continue cooking once it's out of the oven, and it's probably going to come about 10 or 12 degrees. And so I'm going to actually bring it out about 152, 150, 152 for breast meat, and about 160-ish for the thigh, if you want to put it in the thigh. But I normally pay attention to where the breast is, because that's the piece of meat that everybody really wants. And if the breast is cooked properly, the thigh should be too. So, okay, so it's ready to go. I'm going to put it in the oven, and then we'll check back in about an hour. All right, our turkey is done. And we are going to let it sit for a while. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to let it sit uncovered for a while. You want to let this rest for, it's not going to hurt it if it rests for 40 minutes. It'll eventually be nice and tender. It's going to get a chance for all the juices to distribute inside. If I were to cut off the bone right now, it would start to leak all over the cutting board. If I give it an opportunity to rest, what's going to happen is this bird is all the juices inside the bird are going to redistribute inside of the muscle tissue, so it'll be nice and juicy. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave this alone. We're going to let it sit for 40 minutes, and we're going to come back and carve it once it's finished sitting. Okay, so we've been waiting for about 40 minutes for our turkey to rest. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take our turkey and we are going to put it on this cutting board. I need to make sure that I try to support it as best I can in the center, so I'm using a fork for that. Now these drippings here, these are good for, you can actually render these down with some of your stock and a little bit of flour, and you can make a beautiful gravy out of that. There's a lot of oil in there, and so you can actually use that with some gravy in there, or if you like, you can also put some cornstarch in cold water and whisk that in there instead of flour. But you can make a really nice gravy, a drippings gravy for your turkey. But we're just going to show you how to carve the bird now that it's cooked. So what we have is we have all the different pieces. We're going to try to cut those off now. So I'm going to cut, and as you can see how easy it is to just pull this straight down. And then there's one little area that you need to get in here where the bone is, okay? And so it's connected in here. And I'm just going to cut straight alongside there so it comes free. And then there's one little spot here where it's connected. And we are going to pop this bone out. As you can see, I just used this to just pop it, and the joint came right out. And there's that piece. So let me set my two legs and thighs. All right. So here we go. Another nice piece along the back there. So now let's get these wings off. Now the wings, we want to pull out and it will start to remove itself. It'll pop itself out of the joint once I pull. And then I just cut in between the joint and the wing comes off. All right, now we have our breast meat. And we cut the wishbone out earlier. So I'm going to cut straight down alongside the breastbone. Inside of here is a piece of cartilage. And we don't want to cut, we want to cut around that and alongside that. And so all I'm doing is finding the breastbone down here and I'm slicing down. Now there's going to be some rib meat that stays on here. And that's okay. That rib meat, you can pull that off of there. But what we want to try to do is cut as close as we can to the bone so that it all comes out as one big, large piece. And then we can carve that up in a moment. So there's our breast meat. And like we said, there's little pieces here that you can pull off. And, you're in the kitchen, so you can taste some. Oh, it's so good. Holy cow, is that amazing. And the breastbone actually broke. I don't know if you remember, but we scored the breastbone earlier. And so the breastbone's actually broken in here. Cut this off. And we need to cut alongside this breastbone. So we're going to cut here, straight alongside. And there is our turkey breast, okay? Now, this is also really good for soup the next day. If you just take this piece here and this piece here and you throw it in the pot with your turkey stock, all this meat will eventually separate from there and sort of fortify that, and it'll be a beautiful turkey soup. So you can save these bones for your turkey soup. This is essentially the middle carcass of the turkey. I do want to show you a couple of things on how to separate the rest of this. One of the things you want to do is you want to lay your breast down face down, skin side down, okay? And when we cut, we want to cut the breast and cut through the skin, right? So you hear, I don't know if you can hear that crisp, but there's a crisp skin down there. And as I cut through, I'm cutting little pieces. And you want to cut your breast the way I'm cutting. You do not want to cut your breast this way. The breast meat has a big, long, sinewy breast, right? And I'm actually cutting it so it's going to be really tender. I'm cutting across the grain here. That's what you want to do. You do not want to, you don't want to cut it this way. If you cut it this way, then the grains will be nice and long in there and it'll be stringy and chewy. And you don't want that when you bite into turkey. So now, as you can see, this is super moist. My hands are drenched right now. It's super moist. It's still very warm. And what you'll do is you'll slide your knife underneath this. And then when you serve it, the skin is still on. And it can go to the table just like that, okay? Here's the wing. What I would do with the wing is I would pull until it's separate and then cut straight down that joint. And now there's a piece here and a big chunk of wing meat here. This is essentially white meat. It's like a white meat drumstick. Do the same thing on this wing. I'll pull, and then I'll just find exactly where that bone meets, and I'll just slide my knife right in between the two of those joints. Now, for the thigh, there's a piece of meat in here, or a piece of bone in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find on the chicken leg, I'm gonna find where that bone is down here, and the bone separates this piece. So when I start to open it up, I want to cut directly through that bone. And that bone this is a nice piece of turkey. I know that I never cut the meat off the legs. You can if you want, but I don't. I normally, if you grab a leg and you're eating in my house, you're going to eat the whole leg. So I normally leave that alone. This turkey is super juicy. You can see just from how it looks, it's perfectly cooked. As you can see right here, it's 100% cooked all the way through, and it's so juicy and tender. It's exactly what you want in a bird. Remember, pull it out when it's about 152. If you want to make sure it's really, really cooked, 155. Don't let it go too long. If you let it go too long, it's going to dry out. That's what dries out the bird. But man, it's just absolutely perfect. I'm going to try a little piece of this dark meat. There's dark meat on here. And that's the thing that you sometimes have a problem with. You have to choose when you make a turkey which part is going to taste good. When you make it like this, all of it tastes good. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I want you to think about people around us right now that might not have it as good as we do. And they might not be celebrating Thanksgiving in the way that you or I might be celebrating Thanksgiving. So if you have a table that's full this Thanksgiving, think about giving to other people this year. Go to the food bank, drop food off at the food bank, send some money to modestneeds.org. That's a wonderful organization that I've donated to many times. And help someone out this Thanksgiving season. I know there's a lot of people right now that are out of work, many people in the service industry, many people who cook for a living aren't able to put food on their table this year. So think of others this year on Thanksgiving, and if you have a little extra, be sure to give. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. I'll see you after the holiday.